off with Tyler Skaggs. This was a tremendously unfortunate, untimely. It's horrible. When anybody dies, it's horrible. But somebody his age, 27 years old, with seemingly a bright future in front of him, he was beloved. He was a great teammate, a great guy, a great individual, strong person, and to have somebody's life snatched from him at that age is it's terrible. It's really terrible, and we'll talk a little bit about that because it's a big loss to the Angels, it's a big loss to baseball, and it's a big loss to his family and the community and all of the Angel fans out there. He was a great kid, a good guy, and just seemed to be turning the corner on what would have been a pretty good career. Vinny?
Yeah. Hard news, and for a program that really needs to turn things around and looking towards their youth to help them do that. It's a double, just a double tragedy for the program, for the organization. It's tough. What a great young arm. Obviously, it had some injury issues, but the sky could have been the limit.
Yeah. The press conference yesterday was really moving. The tears were there, and solemnness, and I even watching the game later on. Victor Rojas showed no excitement when Cole Calhoun whacked that ball over center field. We'll go well, home run. It was just really the whole, like the air had been let out of the balloon. They were certainly thinking more about him, and I love the jersey hanging in the locker. I love the patches they had. It's going to take a while. It's going to take a lot of time, but you got to move on. I was glad to see the Angels get a win in that situation. But it's a huge loss, and like you said, Vinny, they don't have a plethora of good starting, healthy pitching. So that's another bad turn of events.
And one thing too, I kind of tip my cap to Brad Ausmus. His first year, as the Angels manager and dealing with a tragic, loss like that. I thought he handled it, tremendously with his press conference and just how, it's like, what are you going to do? You're just going to sit in the hotel? You got to go out and play, I think, to get the, and you could tell it was, weighing on everybody's, minds, but I thought how he handled the whole situation, was great.
Somebody said you can't, what are you going to do, go back to the hotel room? That's the worst thing you can do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Class act and class decision by the Rangers organization to postpone
very much
that game, not even thinking about it, not even considering what their options were, just, absolutely not.
And they asked the Angels, what more can we do? What do you want us to do? Right. They did have a tribute for him before the game, but, they were just, the whole organization, top to bottom, the Rangers were very sympathetic and very, did a good job.
And it's tough too because these are the stretch of games where the Angels can kind of crawl back in it. With the Oakland series and now playing in Texas, and they go to Houston after this, so it's it's just kind of the worst timing you can have.
Again, looking at it from strictly a baseball perspective and not the human perspective. Of course, it's a human tragedy. It's one of those things where they might get a little bit of that bounce for winning for Skaggs right now, but it puts a tremendous hole in there, and it's one of those things where they just don't have any options for getting better this year. They can't, doesn't feel like they can trade. They're going to have to wait for free agency, but careers, life itself is fleeting. So careers, arms, you look across this thing, and hopefully for the Angels organization, this is something that is a rallying point where maybe the organization, the front office, and the owner Artie Moreno decide let's life is fleeting, time is fleeting, right?
That's right.
Let's do something for these fans and for these players. This shouldn't just be about money and luxury caps. It should be about putting a winning program out there on the field. And so maybe some good can come from this terrible, terrible thing.
especially his personal life. I mean, he was only married. I think Carly. I think he got married in December.
Right.
He'd known her from high school, so they've been friends for a long time. And what a devastating blow for her that was.
And what a gutty performance by Corbin for the Nationals.
Yes.
His best friend from in Arizona, right? Played in Arizona, and they were best of friends, and he wore his number and went out there and just pitched a hell of a game. Under those circumstances, it's just unimaginable. But, just gutty and terrific performance.
I think Trout was his roommate first year. They were both out of the same draft, and Trout was really visibly shaken. It's kind of ironic. When I was covering the Angels, we lost a player, Lyman Bostock, who was a very, very, very good athlete, 27 years old. His circumstances were much worse. He was shot to death in Gary, Indiana, after traveling across the border from Chicago following a game against the White Sox. And it was just he was in the wrong car with the wrong people at the wrong time, and somebody pulled up right next to him and just plugged him. But that also is a terrible thing. But to die the way Skaggs died, they say no foul play, no suicide apparent. It just makes you wonder. I mean, they say it's going to take 4 months for the autopsy, and I'm kind of interested in what that might reveal.
Yeah, the two things that popped into my head when I've been talking about this with friends is, number one, if that was some sort of congenital heart disease, right? That's one of the things you think of with a young man passing too early. It's like, how did these doctors, your team doctors and his personal doctors, not know? The second thing is this: if God forbid this is something like a accidental drug overdose, then the players' union has to agree that there needs to be more drug testing, more regular drug testing. And the players' union always goes kicking and screaming when the ownership or the league wants to test more. But if it is something like that, then it's the right time to sit back at the table for the safety of the players going forward, whether the union thinks it's a way for them to, for the owners to kind of bilk these guys. It's just something that needs to be done. If more testing will help save even one life, a 27-year-old promising career, then they need to do it.
Well, you mentioned off air too about that could be the possibility of just a prescription type of drug that maybe mixed with something that maybe he did a combination of things that weren't to be done and unknowingly, and that's also a possibility as well. So
yeah. I mean, Jake. I mean, these guys did lots of injuries and lots of pain, and
got to cope with it, and especially with the. He had Tommy John, 2 years ago, and then he had, the oblique problems, with the Angels and the Diamondbacks. So, I mean, it's, who knows, how much pain he was really in. It's sad, too, because I think this was the wife's trip, too. So it just puts other things in perspective, as well.
That's brutal. Well, our thoughts and prayers go out to the Skaggs family, all his friends, the Angel organization. Artie Marino did a great job, and John Capino and Billy Upler, Brad Osmus, the press conference yesterday, and we pray for them. We pray for the team, and it's a tough situation, and something nobody ever wants to face.
Yeah.
It's just unusual. I'd rather have a guy go out on Tommy John and be out for 2 years. At least he's coming back. You miss him, but he's coming back.
Well, as someone who covered the Angels for so long, you had to have heard. The Angels curse. I mean, they've lost a lot
of players.
Adenhart, obviously.
Adenhart was a
Chico, Ruiz, Mike Miley, Lyman Bostock, as you said before.
Valbuena.
Valbuena just recently.
Exactly. And then even in the early 60s when they were still in Los Angeles, there was
Rojas, Minnie Rojas.
Yeah, Dick Wantz.
Dick Wantz.
Yeah. And then, of course, Donnie Moore after he'd been released, again, tragedy following this organization, and
that Nick Adenhart thing was really that was devastating as well. I mean, he just pitched 6 shutout innings against Oakland. He's going home, and some drunk runs a red light. I mean, that's just I mean, You'd think there'd be ways to avoid such situations like that, but there aren't.
No.
I mean, life is life. I mean, you don't know, you know.
No,
It was
but
a-
even that, I mean, you know, there's somebody to blame, right? You know, there was somebody driving drunk who hit this poor kid.
Yeah.
You know, with this situation, we're not going to know for a while, so we don't know. You know, so there's all of this sadness and this anger, and you don't know where to point that finger, and you know, we speculate a little bit here during this broadcast, but we don't know. We don't know.
No.
And it'll be a while before we do.
And then you got Tommy LaStella, who's going to be out for 8 to 10 weeks with a
Yeah,
broken
that
leg.
was
that
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now, did he break it?
He broke it.
Oh, I heard it was just bruised.
Oh, broken leg.
They
See,
just
now
got they just got their starting lineup back.
All-star.
for the first time this season.
All-star.
All-star, and he just found out it's 8 to 10 weeks, and they were replacing him for I forgot who, but yeah, he's out for 8 to 10.
You know, just when you think it can't
get
get any worse. But it puts things in perspective, right? I'm sure you know, he's having a good year, and he knows that he'll be back,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, well, that's the thing.
yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and I think Angel fans look at that and say, yeah, you know, our luck, but at least they, you know he's coming back.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Yeah. Well, it was a tough day and a tough situation, and we wanted to lead off with that because we thought it was certainly